attachment parenting and sleep training. It's not often a popular combination, and why might that be? Well, it really depends on what attachment parenting means to you, but generally speaking, attachment parenting is the kind of parenting that may involve co-sleeping or baby wearing, baby carrying, feeding on demand, self-led weaning and that kind of thing. That's not to say those things are all exclusively classed as attachment parenting. You might do one of those things, two of those things, some of those things, and still not be an attachment parent. But people have different ideas about attachment parenting. And sometimes people actually say, I like the concepts of attachment parenting, although I wouldn't class myself as an attachment parent. Maybe that's you. There are some lovely concepts about attachment parenting. There are some ways in which it can be very helpful and brilliant for the parent and the child and the bond and nurturing them. There can also be some ways where it's possibly not so helpful, like perhaps when you have two young ones, perhaps you start off along an attachment parenting road with one, then another child is born not too long later, and actually the things you would do in an attachment parent way with the first, you can't do anymore because you have another young baby to look after. So it can be a number of different things to different people. But what I want to look at today is the theory behind attachment parenting and sleep training. The reason why the two don't often come together is because quite often attachment parents follow more philosophies about kind of just doing whatever the baby wants. And that might not necessarily be what the baby needs, but it often will be what the baby wants. And so training in any kind of way probably wouldn't be high on the agenda for an attachment parent, because to train a child, or to train anything into anyone, requires consistency, it requires boundaries, and it requires structure. And those are things that you may not have in your attachment parenting principles. Maybe you do, but you may not have, which is why sometimes those two things don't go together. But they can. They absolutely can. You can work on sleep and have an attachment parenting style to how you parent. So how can you? What are the things we need to consider? Well, number one, you need to consider what your goals are. What outcomes are you hoping for? What do you actually want to achieve in the sleep training? Maybe you are co-sleeping with your child. You don't want to stop co-sleeping, but you want your child to actually sleep because maybe you're co-sleeping but they're not really sleeping very well. Or maybe you're co-sleeping and your little one is helping themselves to feeds, to maybe feeding from mum whenever they stir awake in the night. And mum is thinking, well, I don't want them to do that anymore. I'm still happy to have my child in my bed, but just don't want this kind of, endless, using mummy like a pacifier kind of scenario. That might be your goal. Another goal I'm thinking of, perhaps you're not co-sleeping. Maybe you like having your baby in your room, or your young child in your room. You like that closeness. But you're also finding that your child wakes up a lot, struggles to settle themselves, needs a lot of help to get to sleep. So you want to improve that. You want to help your child to be able to put themselves to sleep, but you do still want that closeness. That's possible too. So I think it's really important at the beginning to just actually consider, well, what is it I'm actually setting out to achieve here? What do I want to achieve with my child's sleep? And how does that sit with my attachment parenting philosophies? Do I want the best of both worlds here? And just see if they marry up, because it's really important to recognize what is and isn't realistic in terms of possible. If you want your child who co-sleeps in your bed next to you to be able to put themselves to sleep, you can do some work on that, but you've got to consider the fact that your being there may be the crutch. Your being there may be the thing that enables your child to put themselves to sleep. So maybe they're not fully putting themselves to sleep, because you being there is an essential ingredient. So if you want your child to be able to put themselves to sleep, that's the skill that they'll be able to do anytime. So you could say night night, put them down and go out for the evening, or something similar. If you really want that skill to be 100% there, and when they can put themselves to sleep, that also means put themselves back to sleep if they stir or wake in the night, which we all do. So if that's the thing you want to achieve, but you are adamant that you still want to sleep in the same bed as your child, you've got to understand that your being there might be actually a part of that. It might be doing it for the child a little bit. So there's only so far down that skill line that you're going to get with your child. You'll definitely be able to get progress, but you won't be able to, I guess, master that skill in that child if you being there is a requirement. To completely independently settle themselves, it needs to be completely independent. So just consider what you actually want to achieve. Just make sure that your goals and your expectations are in line with each other, because otherwise it might not, it won't work, because you won't see it through. The second thing is to be aware of intermittent reinforcement, and I talk about that quite a lot. But basically, when you're training anything, you have to be consistent, and I mean anything. A great complete sideline example is if you are training to get into better shape. You're not going to get in better shape if you randomly now and again exercise, or if you randomly now and again binge eat. You've got to be consistent. There's got to be regularity. Anything you want to achieve will be achieved over daily actions, even if they're small, but certain principles that you go with every single day. So if you're going to teach your child anything, you need to be consistent. When your child learns to read, they don't just pick up a book once every few months. They need practice every single day, and they'll get better at it and better at it. So it's the same kind of concept. Now, it's not going to work if you, for example, say, no, you're going to sleep in your own crib or your own cot or your own bed or what have you. That's where you're going to sleep now. That's where you're going to sleep now. Yep, I'm putting you down. This is where you're sleeping. And then, some point in the day or in the early hours of the morning, and you just think, oh, I had enough. It's fine. Come on, let's put you in a sling, or I'll just carry you or rock you off to sleep, and you just change your mind when you don't feel like it, or you decide, because that other part of you is saying, why not? What's wrong with that? I want to do that, and that's fine. But just know that if you're going to do that, if you know that you're likely to do that, you're going to not only not see results, but probably make the situation worse and harder for yourself and for your child. Intermittent reinforcement, or in other words, a lack of consistency, is the likely route to creating a monster and basically making your situation worse than it was before you even began. Why? Because what you do there is you teach your child, it's like saying no, 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 oh, okay then. And what you're doing there is you're teaching your child that, oh, all right, so I know it's a yes, I know I can get that eventually, so I'll tell you what, yeah, okay, I see what they're doing here. They're teaching me that I need to scream harder, cry harder, hold out longer, protest more, and then I'll get it. So, okay, fine, I'll do that. And the same goes for any age child. If you teach them that, yeah, eventually I might say yes, there is a chance, then they will persist until they break you down. I'm thinking of older kids there, but it's the same principle. So just make sure that you are confident and happy and understand the absolute importance of your consistency. The third thing I want to share with you on this kind of attachment parenting meets sleep training combination is what you actually could achieve, why it is worth it, and how you can achieve something. I spoke to a lady who was saying, I really like and have followed kind of principles of attachment parenting, but I've never co-slept with my children. And I said, that's okay. It doesn't, that doesn't make you any less of an attachment parent if that's the principles you like to follow. But she really wanted to understand what she could achieve. And she said, my baby is still in my room, and I think this baby was probably about 10 months or something, definitely past the recommended safety guidelines for room sharing. And she said, I quite like them being in my room. Does that make it impossible for me to improve the sleep? And I said, no, it doesn't make it impossible, but you have to look at the individual situation and the individual child. If your child is very switched on, very alert, then actually being in that same room with you might be sabotaging their learning efforts. When your child wakes up and looks around and goes, oh yeah, it's still night time, and maybe wants to practice that, I'll just lie back down and go to sleep, they're going to find that a lot harder if they're like, oh, you're there, hi, and just try to interact with you. Or if that's the norm, if it's, I'm awake, come and see me. And even if coming and seeing them is just going over there and a little, shh, come on now, lie down, that's enough for them to think, that's what we do. I wake up, we do this. They're going to wake up. We all wake up. We wake up 3 to 6 times a night. It's going to happen. But the only way to expect that child to resettle is through practice. So it may or may not be easier and actually kinder on the child to give them their own space, give them that room to maneuver, to figure things out and to practice. That doesn't mean you're going to ignore them. If they wake up screaming and they need you, you go. That's, of course you do. Everything I recommend is responsive. You're always going to respond to your child. You're always going to meet their needs. But you're also going to learn that needs and wants are different. A child's needs need to be met. A child's wants don't need to be met. And it's very easy to confuse the two, especially when you are an attentive and sleep-deprived parent who just wants peace and harmony. So the point here really is that you can still keep the closeness if you have come from perhaps attachment parenting principles, but you know that it's now time to kind of move on from that. Perhaps there is a new child on the way or has arrived, or perhaps you just know that it's not really serving you or your child anymore. If that's you and it's time to move on, then just know that you can keep that closeness, that bond that you formed, that lovely sense of security that your child has. And if you decide it's time to move them to their own room and start helping them become a better sleeper, that doesn't mean you're going to break that. That doesn't mean you're going to leave them there to feel all alone or be crying out and nobody comes, or all those kind of horror stories. That's not what you would need to do in order to improve their sleep. What you would be doing is you would be going, here, look, here's a nice new sleep environment that's yours. You're used to going to sleep with me right nearby. You're still going to go to sleep with me right nearby. And you would start off by staying close by in that room whilst your child falls asleep, offering comfort and reassurance, being just as attentive as you were in your room. But bit by bit, you'll be able to almost hand over the reins to your little one as and when they're ready, so that they're actually quite happily developing that ability and quite happily becoming more independent and more skilled. Just because a child or a baby becomes independent and is capable doesn't mean your attachment is in any way broken. Independence and maybe not needing you quite so much doesn't mean that you haven't got that closeness and that attachment. So just remember that, you want your child to grow up to become a very independent adult. So don't take away their independence as a little one if that's what they're seeking. Independence doesn't mean there's no bond, there's no attachment. Attachment is healthy in an independent child. So that's all really I wanted to share. There's really 3 key points. So just remember, if you are from an attachment parenting mindset, but you want to think about some sleep training, just consider, what are your goals? What are the outcomes you really want to achieve? Beware of intermittent reinforcement and understand that you have got to be consistent. Training will require some rules and boundaries, and you'll need to stick to them. And finally, know that you can achieve something. You can see improvements. sleep training with attachment parenting philosophies. So there you go, hopefully some tips to drive you forward. And of course, if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to get in touch. We have a team of consultants ready to help you and guide you through by the hand.